there might actually not be another widget that does the same thing that your widget does exactly. However, there's always something that people are doing to solve that problem. And it could be some DIY hack. They're using masking tape and this and that. They're literally hacking something together, or or they're just they're figuring some other workaround. But they are solving. They're not waiting for you to solve their problem.
Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm excited to have Andrew Lees with us. Andrew is the host of the podcast show, co-host actually, of The Entrepreneur Life, and he has a background in mechanical and aerospace engineering. But the main reason I have him on and asked him to come on is to talk about how launch strategy can help you save years of your life and thousands to ten thousands of your dollars just by doing things right. So he helps entrepreneurs develop their products and their launch strategy. He uses experience with his own launch process to guide people around the pitfalls of starting a new business and to lay out a clear plan of success. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew, on the show today.
Thank you, Wade. Yeah, it's really great to be on your show. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to you about entrepreneurship and and launch planning and anything else you want to talk about.
Awesome, great. So a lot of times there's this, say it's a myth, so that's already a judgment, but this image of the rugged entrepreneur that has this idea that wakes them up in the middle of the night and they're going to do this magical thing, and they don't need guidance, they don't need to read a book, they're just going for it. And
Yeah.
movies are made about this, and that happens what, maybe, well, a small percentage of the time. When
Hmm.
people talk to you about having a launch strategy and that sort of stuff and starting a business, it might seem boring to some, or it might even seem that it's not necessary. Why is
Hmm.
it so important to have a solid strategy to launch a business and to get it going profitably?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I can talk from my experience. I did it without a plan. I started a product company called Grass Racks. We make, and I still run that and own it. We make bamboo and birch display racks for boards, bikes, and skis. Um, and I think about, like, we're doing well now. We're starting to grow a lot faster now, but it's taken years. And I know very confidently that if I had a more of a plan in the beginning, then I would have known what to do earlier on. And that's part of the problem, is I didn't know what I needed to do to efficiently and effectively grow the business. Now, it still would not have happened overnight. That never happens. But I'm very confident that I think we would have been where we are now a couple years ago, which is a huge difference. Because if I had more of a plan, more of a strategy, then if we were where we are now a couple years ago, then today would be telling a different story. I mean, it's good, but it could have been so much better. And we've definitely wasted thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, on different things that just didn't work, and kind of mistakes that could have been avoided with a plan. So it's really important. And I should distinguish between the strategy that I put together for clients and like a formal business plan. I'm not a fan of formal business plans unless you need a loan from the bank. Also not a fan of taking a loan from a bank if you don't have to, because you're guaranteed to have to pay it back, but you're not guaranteed to have the money to pay it back with. So unless you are taking a loan out from a bank, or maybe if you're looking for some venture capital from some investors might require a formal business plan, but more likely they'll require a pitch deck and some more in-depth analysis of the business. A formal business plan is it's very antiquated. People write them. They're typically like dozens of pages long, and they include a lot of speculation, a lot of words, and not a lot of actionable things. That's the big problem, and that's what I want to be able to help people with, is give them actionable items that they can work on in their business.
Awesome. That's a great, huge distinction. Yeah, I remember I read when I first started out a little over 20 years ago. I read a consulting book, and the author did a good job, giving actionable items, but also this is 20 years ago and everything was a tangible book. So the book had to have 200 pages in it or 150 pages in it to justify being printed as a book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
similar to a business plan, there needs to be a certain amount of oomph to it.
Sure.
And if there's not there, then people think, well, there might be something missing. And to be really clear, yeah, to echo your statement, absolutely. You're not going to avoid that. You're still going to make decisions that cost you thousands of hours or tens of thousands of dollars or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's those avoidable ones that really hurt. It's when you look back
Exactly.
and say, gosh, if I had just done this very reasonable, normal thing that I could have researched, let's say. I mean, again, there's going to be certain things that get thrown your way that you just say, well, I sometimes tell my wife when sometimes I couldn't have seen that happen unless I was psychic. And so that doesn't hurt as much. I mean,
Yeah.
it still hurts. It hurts financially and it hurts, but it's worse when you look at it and you say, gosh, this book that my friend recommended to me, years ago, gosh, if I'd have just read that book or whatever it is, that's
Yeah.
such a big difference. And certainly your point about it being actionable. I remember I did a consulting project once for a client, and it was on a sales process of theirs and some software. And the short version was I had a 1 page summary that was what they needed to do, but I still
Hmm.
had to deliver the other 30 pages of paper because this was
Hmm.
20 years ago and it's for a corporation. I couldn't just give them the one piece. And yet it would have been in their better interest to just read my one piece of paper
Yeah.
30 times than it would have to read all 30 pages once. And they probably, oh, okay. Yeah, it's almost like you weigh it like, okay, there's enough here. Great. We can, let's
Yeah,
write this
yeah.
down.
You justify. Yeah, there's some. I think people get hung up in different areas of business too. They get hung up on these vanity metrics, and that. I would say that that's a vanity metric. Like, ah, that looks weighty enough. That looks like we should pay you X amount. When the one page, the value that you pulled into the one page could have been worth, maybe even worth multiple times, the rest of the document to them. And that's interesting what you said about reading the one page 30 times would have been better than reading the 30 pages one time. I think that speaks to, because the other thing I was going to say is if you have a strategy and you only look at it once, then it won't serve you, because it's about business um is about planning, testing, and then adjusting. And if you're not testing and adjusting, if you're only just executing on one notion of how you think the business should run, then you're going to be, in trouble very quickly, and you're not going to be able to adjust. You'll hit a wall eventually, and you'll just throw your hands up and say, "Well, I did the best I could with this." It's like, no, if you're going to be successful, you're going to pivot and adjust and change things. You're going to create a business model, and you're going to definitely 100% change some things in there, so in order to be successful.
Absolutely. And to your point, funnily enough, the 30 pages were more of a narrative and the 1 page was actionable items.
The
Shocker.
meat.
That's
Yeah.
the part that it's easy to read the 30 pages and say, oh, yeah, that sounds great. Here's the ideas. Here's the reasons why. And the 1 page was here's exactly what needs to happen. These people need to do this. These people need to do this. These people need to do.
Yeah.
And it was just very clear. And the description of it was very uh, open ended in the sense of it might be like, as I said, if it were a coach to say, well, okay, our basketball team needs to work out for an hour every day. And without even putting in exactly what the workout needs to look like. And that was part of the 30 pages, but to say, here's what needs to happen. It's like, oh, yeah, that sounds a lot like work. About those 30
Hmm.
pages, those sound really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Like if it's in theory, if you're thinking about it, a task in theory, and you're not, when it gets boiled down and you've got that task that you need to do and it's staring you in the face, maybe it's intimidating to some people, but really if you're trying to grow your business, that should be the most exciting thing is, oh, I just have to work hard and do this, and that's it, so yeah, I think that's really important to kind of just get to the meat of what you need, and not and it is difficult sometimes for some people and some businesses to understand that there doesn't have to be all this fluff. There shouldn't be all this fluff because it really distracts you from what the most important thing is, and that there can be a lot of value in just cutting to the point, and just because you don't have, you're able to fit everything on one page doesn't mean that wasn't a lot of work for you. It doesn't mean you didn't put a lot of thought, energy, and time. You might have on the side written, 30 pages for you that you use to cut down to the one, and it's all work. It's all a lot of work, and where you end up and is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think about and I imagine you've had clients like this, or at least applicants to be clients. The person that says they don't want to read your $10 book, but they want to pay you, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. It's like, whoa, whoa, slow down. Don't get me wrong. I'd love the five or $10,000, but
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
not willing to read the 100-page book, that might be a red flag that
Right, right,
that we're heading the wrong direction.
right.
Question for you: how do you mentioned a little bit? I'd like to hear more about your business with the rack. How did you figure out of still while you're developing this product, which to a lot of people then seems okay, it's about the product, right? Because you're in a business that sells a product.
Hmm.
How do you keep the audience and their wants or their needs before the product, and yet do it in a way that balances that? Yes, you still have this vision of what this product is or service or whatever it might be,
Hmm.
and you want to be able to share. And this is the part where people say, "Oh, you're about to sell it." No, I'm not saying sell out, but you maintain true to what it is that you want to deliver, and yet
Hmm.
at the same time balancing it with what people actually want and yes, will actually pay for. How do you balance that, and how do you factor that into your planning?
Yeah, that's a great question because you at the end of the day, you need to deliver a product or service that people are interested in, that they need. It has features that will help them, because you're trying to provide some kind of value to them. Um, but you definitely have to figure out how am I going to help the most people, and you have to know that there's going to be some people that your product or service isn't going to help. It's not going to be a good fit for them. They might need something that you don't provide in your standard product or service, and you have to be okay with you do one of two things. You make it so it's very custom for everybody, and that's a lot easier for a service. If you're a consulting service, then you can do that. But if you're a product, like with our rack products, we created a standard product, and then we did do some custom work for different people. And the custom work was because that they wanted a standard product but just with another feature, or they wanted something longer, shorter, whatever. And so we would try and accommodate certain customers, and it became way, way, way too much work. The expectations, all of a sudden, when you're doing something custom for somebody, they expect everything, um, and it just wasn't worth the squeeze at all. We were able to. The ironic thing is that for a couple of custom projects that were larger, there were several $1,000s. Arguably, that kept us in business in the beginning. So sometimes you kind of need to take on those things that you don't necessarily want to scale with, but they just need to keep you afloat. Um, but but at one point we just realized that, oh, we've made this standard product. We've figured out by getting feedback from customers, and we tweaked the product, over some time in the beginning, because that is important to your point, that you have to figure out what people want, but you can't go so far that you're making everything custom every time, um, that you're getting distracted by trying to meet every single need of every single customer. But you definitely have to make sure that your product has a lot of value. And once you kind of figure that out, when there's enough people, when you get enough traction with your standard product or service, and there's enough people saying, "Hey, I can use this, let's say, to hang my skis, and it works really well, and it looks amazing, and the price point's good, and enough that it checks enough boxes for most people." Then all right, this is it. I'm doubling down on this, and I'm going to focus on selling this product. And you really then just have to kind of let the rest of the distractions go, because otherwise they can really weigh you down.
Yeah, I think of something when I started doing software I have that's a business, and my simple definition of a business, I've heard this from different people, is it is something that's repeatable that I could delegate to somebody else versus the coaching and consulting I do, which still makes money, and it's a coaching business, but it's a it's my hours sort of a thing.
Sure.
But I remember when I first made the first time I did this, I created the software solution. The first job was custom by definition because a client asked for it, and yeah, I charged, I think it was like $2,000 or whatever it was. This is 20 years ago. And the second job was another person. They wanted it custom, and I hadn't yet seen a pattern. I didn't know more were coming, so that was about 2,000. Third guy was about 2,000 or 1,500. So I was able to now say, okay, I'm going to take some of the software that I, the coding I did the first time, and by the time I hit the third one, I just said, okay, great. For the next person that came on, I said, look, I've got this version of it that does 80% of what these things do. And this is a renewal business model. So I was doing $2,000 and then 200 renewal. I said, look, it'll be 600
Mhm.
bucks and $200 renewal. And now that same software I do what for either 500 a year or 1,000 a year, whatever it is. But the long story short was, to your point, getting to that point where the product at a good enough price point is good enough, because then when those custom people come in, and I actually almost won't do it at all. I'll do a couple tweaks. Like I'll get into, okay, is it going to take me less than an hour to do this? If it's less than an hour and I'm going to keep a client lifetime value for 5 years on average, great, I'll do that. But
Sure.
otherwise, as I'm sure you've experienced, the customer's expectations, okay, you've built this thing and it's taken you, so many hours to build. And then they want just this one little thing. It's like, yeah, just that one little thing. If you're, by the way, if you're doing custom programming and whatnot, charge them at least 2 to 4 times, at least. And you're
Oh
still,
yeah.
I don't know if you're experienced that, you still end up, like you said, it takes your momentum, because
Hmm.
usually, and definitely make sure you get paid up front. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
usually they've got this reason, this story that says, well, I'm special and I'm unique and I'm different. And I'm like, dude, it's software to pay your team members. This is not about, like, this isn't a hat.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
dress for the red carpet. It's not
Yeah.
some, life statement. It's software, man. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it does, very often their unique needs and desires is that they're kind of higher maintenance. And to your point, sometimes, yes, you do need that, because you say, okay, the checks or the bills look about this big, and this check, funnily enough, it's like,
Hmm.
well, check will be about this. No, next time make the check that. Make it at least bigger. So you say, okay, great, got a month in here, because those are
Yep.
the clients that, like you say, so, well, I paid more, and I paid 10% more. Do you realize what that means? I paid 20% more, and you're thinking, oh my God, will this
Yeah.
person just please go away? And they get on your, I don't know about you, they get on my list, like the person that I want to, like, not have a year from now, they're
Yeah.
already on my list, because it's like,
Yeah.
dude, what was about the 99 things about this product that one thing had to have you say, well, no, see, it's missing this one thing. Like, okay,
Yep.
well, yeah, for 4 times the amount, we'll create 4 times the amount. Yes, because we've got to do it right, and
Yeah.
no different than your product. If it doesn't work right, well, then you're going to say it's a bad product, and now you've paid me more, and now you're going to go out and tell people that my product stinks, and then I've got to fix it. Oh, geez.
Hmm.
Yeah, so sorry for
Exactly.
those listening for the rant, but just if you think
No,
it's
it's
painful listening to me talk about it, think living it. It's
yeah, exactly.
pretty
Yeah,
bad.
I feel your pain. I've lived through some bad clients for my consulting business, because I also do product development consulting. And yeah, I've lived through the bad clients, the very very needy clients. And and a product is great where if you can standardize it and you can figure out what it is that most people need, most people then will buy it. And you're not going to get everybody, but you don't have to. And yeah, when you're doing something custom, there's what I think some people don't realize, especially like with the product development work that I do, don't realize is that something could take 10 hours, but it might take 100. I don't know yet, until you really get into it. And it's hard to say, something might look simple. Like for software, I don't know very much about software. So I might come to you and say, hey, I've got this idea for a program or an app or something. It's really, really simple. And I know you'd cringe because that whenever somebody says that, right out of the gate, I'm like, oh, red flag. They think it's super simple. Every once in a while, it really is. I'm like, oh wow, you weren't lying. This is incredibly simple. I've done this 1,000 times, but most times you're doing something that never has been done exactly that way before. And when that happens, it's a major time sink, and that's fine if that's your business model and you really want to, you're doing something very customized. With my launch strategy service, what's nice about that is, kind of from a business perspective, is that it's customized for each client and each product that they're launching, because everything is a little different in the approach, in your approach to launching it. But it's also a lot of it is, roughly within the same framework. And so I can be pretty efficient with how I put them together. It's still, when I'm doing in my in-depth market research, that takes a lot of time. I'll do keyword analysis because that's such a, as you know, such an important part of marketing, is knowing what are the things that people are searching for, where are they searching for them, why are they searching for them. And if you know those keywords, you can apply that to a lot of your marketing efforts, from pay per click to SE, to content, blogs, videos, all, everything. um and that takes a lot of time too, but there are definitely elements where um I can ba- basically already have a good framework set up, so I don't have to customize every little detail of it. But a lot of product development, I do. I'm starting from scratch, like a clean slate. So
Yeah, I think that's a good mix. I found specifically in my business, the software only client is good. But
mm,
people do have the fear that, well, if I have a software or a product, a widget, and that's all I have, that someone can steal the business. And the answer is yes, they can. And
yeah,
that's where I find, at least when I also have some sort of coaching relationship or advising relationship, and the two together,
yeah,
now I'm benefiting from that unique information, which again also could be put in an online course or something where, to your point, there can be a framework. It doesn't, and I think of coaching versus, let's say, consulting. Consulting is, here's how you do X. It's very specific. It's more almost even like training. Whereas coaching is like, okay, if you want to go here, here's the big picture steps. Here's still the 7 steps or 8 steps or whatever it might be. But the
hmm
person can put their voice in there, and you can involve them in that. And so it's sort of that, I forget the word. It's like mass customization, where you have enough of it that's a framework and enough
yep.
of it's unique to them. What do you find when you work with people are their most common mistakes when they're launching a new product?
um the first most common mistake is not doing enough in, like, market research, is really not figuring out what their competitors are, even what comparative products are out there, what the price points are, where those products are being distributed through, and what features, and how people respond to them. And you can do a lot by going on, doing a Google search, and finding competitive products, looking at the reviews, going on Amazon, looking at the reviews there, looking at all the different features that they have, and really trying to figure out, what you're trying to do is figure out where your product fits in the market, how it should be priced, what your value proposition is relative to your competitors, and then who is your customer, like who is your ideal customer, who's the person um, who it's like a no-brainer they're going to buy your product. And um and i and I think people don't do enough of that. The other thing that I hear a lot is, there's no competition for my product.
That's my
There's
favorite
no.
one. This is so
Yeah,
unique. You've never seen anything like this. Nobody can do this.
yeah. And what I tell people is that, yeah, there might actually not be another widget that does the same thing that your widget does exactly. However, there's always something that people are doing to solve that problem. And it could be some DIY hack. They're using masking tape and this and that. They're literally hacking something together, or they're just, they're figuring some other workaround, but they're not waiting for you to solve their problem. Like, I use the example of clothes washing. Before the washing machine came along, people just washed their clothes by hand. That's how they did it, and that worked fine. It took a while, but they weren't waiting for the washing machine to come around. Then when the washing machine came around, that's great, but you've got to pay all this money. It's like a washboard or whatever, and a a pan, or a bucket to wash your clothes in, costs like a fraction of what a washing machine costs. So if you're marketing a washing machine, you can say, yeah, there's no competition for it. There's no other, I don't know who came up with the first washing machine. Let's just say GE. They're like, this has never been done before. Yeah, it's never been done before, but you're not the first person to ever wash clothes. So how do you convince people that you have to convince them that they should pay a lot more money than what they're already paying for the convenience? And how do you do that? And that's part of the challenge. And that's not a trivial challenge.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get excited about their products, and that's great. I do that. I've still struggled at times to get over my domain buying habit.
Yeah.
You get an idea, and it's like, nobody's going to do this. Okay, blah, 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 blah.com. And then,
Yeah.
and then later you see so-and-so is coming up for renewal. You're like, oh, wow, I've been done with that a year. It's still a great idea, but you know what? I'm not going to get to it. Or
Yeah.
if it really was that special, how come nobody got it? So that's always the catch-22 with domains. If it's great, then somebody already bought it. And if nobody bought it, you're like, oh, well, nobody wants it. It's only worth $15 now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of tough. But yeah, it's very difficult to decide, are they going to make that leap? And one of the things I find that people are so, you and I talked about this on the pre-interview, is they're listening to a lot of people. And, you'd said to me a very simple concept of being careful who you're listening to as an
Hmm.
entrepreneur, because there are a lot of opinions out there. And I think maybe other than perhaps marriage advice, no other advice perhaps can be more costly. That's if you're wrong. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of fundamentals out there, but there's actually a lot of people saying the same wrong thing sometimes too, because one sells it and it's making money, and then other people come out and they say the same thing and they're saying the same thing. This makes money. And
Yeah.
very often it's not that the person's malicious. They maybe have incomplete information, or they have a blind spot. They didn't realize that, well, okay, it wasn't this one thing that caused success. It was these three variables, but they knew
Hmm.
that they did the one thing, and maybe they were either subconsciously already doing the other two things, or something of that nature. Um,
Hmm.
how do you help people when they're coming to you with perhaps unrealistic expectations? How do you help them tame those? And then how do you be careful about who you're listening to as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question, because and I'm constantly doing research. So there's a lot of information out there, good and bad. And it, it's tough to know what's good and what's bad, who's telling the truth. And I think you're right. I think most people aren't being malicious in distributing some information, but they don't have the full picture. They don't really maybe realize that, that what they're saying is just kind of BS, or it's not very helpful, or whatever. Maybe they've never actually launched a product before, but like you said, they see other people making money over here, and they're like, ooh, I'm just going to teach this, I'm just going to do some research on it and teach it, and I'm going to make some money too. So I mean, it is, so I do try and debunk myths as much as I can when I'm talking to my clients. I mean, I really love talking them uh, through the process. And I love talking about business and how to launch a product, how to develop a product. And so, I hear a lot of, I watch a lot of Shark Tank. And I'm like, that is awesome. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's there's so much more to it. It's like you've got to know your numbers. Okay, what does that mean? Let's dig into that. Um, what are your manufacturing costs? What are your shipping costs, fulfillment, kitting, fulfillment, customer service, then what are your marketing acquisition costs? All this, there's so much to know. And so I just go, I'm constantly learning. So I think that's important. I don't have all of the answers for every business, every product. I don't think anybody does, and I think if anybody pretends like they do, then that's a red flag. So you should avoid that. I'm constantly learning. Whatever I learn, I'm passing on to my clients. That's just making my service stronger. And and I'm just trying to, if somebody comes to me and asks me a question that I'll about something that they've heard, and I know that it's maybe a myth or that it's not completely accurate. I'll definitely explain it to them, and maybe it's something that I'm not 100% sure whether it's right or not, and then I'll go and research it. So we're I'm definitely learning all the time, but and so I'm trying to then help my clients with what I've learned and try and cut through the BS and figure out, well, why is this right and that's wrong? Because sometimes something that you look at something on the surface and it makes sense. It seems like it makes sense that it would be correct. But then if you dig a little deeper, or if you have experience with that thing, you say, yeah, it seems like that would be the case, but here's why it's not, because I've experienced that, or I've done enough research to figure out why that's not the case.
Yeah, that's one of the things I tell people is one of the best ways if you're interviewing a potential coach or consultant would be to say, what are three things that seem like a good idea that just don't work? Because there's a lot of them. There's a
Hmm.
lot of things that make logical sense, and you can, not everything that's logical is right. You can have faulty logic. You can say, well, A, B,
Yeah.
C, D, and it's like, no, but that's just not what happens in real life. Because also God is great and beer is good and people are crazy. So you throw that in there, and a lot of things that seem like they're going to work again can be very well thought out and have this sort of textbook philosophical sense that they're going to work, and
Yeah.
yet they don't. How do you help people avoid the myth that they can buy their way into a business? Because I think of this, especially in your field, you must run it out. I
Mm.
usually deal with people that have established businesses. And so very often they've kind of gotten past that sense. Though I do have clients that sometimes, again, think that if they write me a big enough check that they don't have to do the work. And it doesn't
Right.
work. Yeah,
Yeah,
you still have to
sure.
do the push-ups. You still have to do the sit-ups. Whatever it is, you still have to execute.
Hmm.
How do you avoid that myth? And then how do you, of being able to buy your way into business, and how do you consult people on that if they really are passionate about something, but they're kind of overestimating that?
Yeah, so I think it depends on how you plan on buying into a business. I think there's some things you can do that can get you, that you can invest you can invest money into some things that will get you a lot further down the road than others. Like, say you buy, um, you're going to start a carpet cleaning business, and you buy a blog that has 50,000 views a month on relevant carpet cleaning topics. Then that might be a great investment, if you have the cash, and you figure out how much you think you can make on that traffic over time, and it works out. If you're As long as you're able to to recoup that investment in a reasonable amount of time, then that could make sense. But it's not going to keep you from doing work forever. I mean, that's maybe just a good starting point, but you're usually going to have to put in a good amount of work yourself, and it really is going to be, unless you have a lot of cash and you really are treating the business as, you are just an investor. You don't need to make money for a while. Like, you might cash out at the end, and that's okay with you. You don't have to make a lot of money in the interim, while you're building value, and you're okay to pay everybody else to do everything. then that could be one strategy. But definitely, I wouldn't. Uh, you're not gonna just pay a bunch of people to do everything and just sit back 100% of the time and just make a bunch of money. That just won't happen.
Absolutely.
It just
That's a
can't
very rare
happen.
thing.
Yeah,
Unless you
yeah,
have some sort of relationship or you're set up or your parents are independently wealthy and they've hooked you up.
yeah.
Those few circumstances, but for the average mortal, that's not going to happen.
Yep, exactly.
One of the things we talked about in the pre-interview was needle movers and
Hmm.
making sure that we're focusing on those as opposed to some of the shiny objects and shiny objects. And I'm going to be really clear on my definition of shiny objects just for those listening too, because shiny objects, people usually think a shiny object is something that's completely unrelated, that's easy to identify. And
Mm,
my experience is it's that whole good versus great, that the enemy of great is good, that that can steal your attention. So it's not, well, I run, I don't know, let's use the carpet cleaning business.
hmm.
Look, spending time on Facebook, that's a shiny object. Okay, that's easy to see. Going over here,
Yeah,
looking at ESPN for the scores, that's a shiny object.
yeah,
This other content I'm consuming by this person who's not in the carpet cleaning business, it's not going to help me grow my carpet cleaning business, that's about something else, that's a shiny object too, as opposed
yeah.
to those number of things. How do you identify those needle movers and how do you stay focused on those? How do you do that and how do you advise people to do that?
Yeah, and as entrepreneurs, we're constantly battling that. I think, right? There's so many different ways of doing everything, um, and that's part of it. That's part of the strategy is figuring out for your product or service what do we think is the most efficient way to get to really move the needle, like you said, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And when people refer to moving the needle, that just means having a significant increase in business. If I spent 100 hours doing something that that grows my business by 0.1%. I mean, it depends on how big the business is, obviously, but that's not going to do it. That doesn't help that much. But if you spend 100 hours doing something that improves the business maybe 1% or maybe 5%, then that could be, that could have massive gains over the long run. So yeah, so the first thing is figuring out what is it that can really get you more business. I mean, once you have your product figured out, and you've got enough feedback, it's been out in the market long enough that people are buying it, and that you have a good product, then it's really like what are the key things that can help grow your business in a significant way. That doesn't mean that you're going to 10x your business in a month, but that means that over time you're doing these things that really help in a significant way. I can kind of give you an example of that, and hopefully I'm not getting too off track here, but
No, I'll actually love examples even better because again, that's how people can contextualize things. So absolutely, please.
yeah. So with grass racks, we only sell online. Excuse me. Our cost of goods are high enough that we can't, at least for now, and we're working on this, but we can't right now sell into retailers, into brick and mortar stores, which in the world we live in right now, that's okay for us. Selling online is, all online is okay. We don't get those volume orders that we would if we were selling into like a Dick's or something. But we are able to still keep our prices reasonable and have a more direct relationship with our customer. But it is difficult because it's you're not getting volume orders. You're selling one at a time, one product at a time. And so what are the things that can really help you do that? We spend some time on Instagram. We're being more consistent about it, and we're starting to see some results. But when you look at the numbers for right now, and we're gonna keep working on it, but we got to be careful that we don't spend way too much time on it, because when you actually look at the clicks back from Instagram to our website and the purchases that are made, it's there aren't many. On Pinterest, on the other hand, we're doing really well. We're getting a lot of impressions, a lot of clicks, a lot of saves and shares. Like that's our um, that's our social media platform that really works for us. But then there's other things we can do that we're working on that I think can really, when we think about really move the needle for the business and really being able to scale, is by working with board manufacturers and bike manufacturers, as with like basically an affiliate program um, that is sort of like a tangible affiliate program. So a few months ago, we got some knives sharpened by a company called Knife Aid. And I think there was actually, speaking of Shark Tank, I think that was on, on Shark Tank. So we sent our knives out. They send you a package, send your knives out, they sharpen it, they send it back. When they sent them back, there was a discount code for 10% off of, I actually can't remember what it was now, but it was, I think it was a pre-prepped food service, like 10% off, something like that. And that's genius because it's so relevant. I just got my knives sharpened and now I'm getting 10% off this thing. I might do that. So that's something that we think it'll be a lot of work, but we think could be really impactful for the business, to work with board manufacturers, ski manufacturers, and bike manufacturers to do the same thing. When they ship out a product, we send them a little card that they put into each order. It's barely anything for them to do. The customer gets a discount, and then the manufacturer will give them a commission on every sale. And for them, it's an extra, few bucks. It's easy to do, and it just increases their lifetime value of every single customer by almost doing nothing extra. And then we get all these sales, because if you just bought a couple of surfboards, where are you going to put them? You need a rack for it. So like, there we are right there. So there's things like that I think can really move the needle. And then there's other things that we have to be careful of for that business, is like Instagram. It's great. It can be helpful to at least build awareness and give us some credibility, but we have to be careful about how much time we spend on it, because if it doesn't increase sales, then it's not something that we can spend too much time on.
Yeah, for me, the social media channel about a year and a half ago, I went all in for about a 4 or 5 month period. And I realized that's not enough, just so for those listening. But what I saw in 4 and 5 months was enough for me to say, okay, I'm putting this on pause. Was that, yes, I was putting in a lot of time into, and I was trying to hit all the channels. And that was probably my biggest mistake. I was trying to hit Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all at the same time, YouTube.
Mhm.
And first of all, in my case, a lot of my stuff is B2B. So not all of my clients, and a lot of my clients are close to my age. I'm 49. So a lot of my clients were not necessarily as active, or at least making buying decisions on Instagram or
Mhm.
even Twitter as much. And there was this sense of accomplishment. Because also I like creating stuff like a lot of entrepreneurs. So I felt like, great, I just put out something. And I remember telling one of the freelancers that was working with me, I want to put out beautiful content, in the sense of high quality, that if somebody looks at it, they might say, okay, Wade doesn't put out 100 pieces of something, but when he puts out something, it's good. And
Yeah.
we did that. But to your point, very similar experience. And it's not a knock on Instagram. It also depends on what space you're in and what you're doing. But
Mhm.
a lot of likes. But I can't eat likes. And the
Yep.
grocery
Yep.
store won't accept likes as payment. Now, I for a
Yep.
while was, hi, somebody likes it somewhere. And then of course, in specific to Instagram, it's a less validated network. I feel like I'm hating on Instagram, not trying to, but like LinkedIn is your resume. Like LinkedIn, if somebody likes something of yours on LinkedIn or comments, chances are it's that person.
Mhm.
Instagram, it might be a bot. It might be somebody that's liking your things, about to come to try to sell you their service of getting you more likes.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
and again, there's some things like that, but just in general, to your point, it
Mhm.
feels like work, and that's the part I think that's the toughest, because it's almost like the wolf in sheep's clothing, shiny object work. Like you feel like, but I'm. It's almost like you want to look at the entrepreneurial gods, like, but I'm working. I'm
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying something. I'm not being bad. I'm not watching stupid videos. I really
Yeah.
feel like I'm working, and ultimately, the market still says, but I don't care. And it's really the customer that says, not in a dispassionate way, not in a mean way, but I want X. And you're
Hmm.
talking about 50 other things. And as somebody who's not strong on research and disciplined is the word, and I'm becoming more, you get your butt kicked enough by not doing research and you start
Yeah,
becoming a fan of research. At
sure.
least
Yeah.
it doesn't excite me as much. And yet, for those of y'all who don't like research, something I found is the more I research, then it does give me better ideas. So I'm also realizing,
Hmm.
people say, trust your gut. Yeah, if you ask me to do brain surgery, I don't have a lot of information there. So me trusting
Yeah.
my gut and doing brain surgery, it ain't
It's
going to work
not
out
gonna
well
be
whether I
good.
trust my gut or not.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
other hand, something that I know a lot about, yes, trusting my gut because my gut's informed. My intuition
Hmm.
is very informed. And
Yep.
I think that's something where when people talk about growth hacks or who you listen to as an entrepreneur, like you said, there's certain red flags. When somebody says, here's the greatest thing ever that's never been done before, and it makes so much money and I'm giving it to you, you're like, yeah, because you wouldn't just hide that and do it yourself if you could, obviously.
Hmm.
That's perhaps a bit of a red flag. How do you find fundamentally sound growth hacks that help you accelerate the growth of your business? And how do you do that at times, either with or without paying for ads? And what's the pros or cons of that? Because you just mentioned one part, in case people didn't see it, what you just clearly identified was the danger of over investing time, which of course your time still cost you money and lost opportunities somewhere. And
Yep.
people miss that. They say, but I didn't invest money. Yeah, but you just invested 400 hours and you got,
Hmm.
let's say, very little back. How do you find growth hacks that help you accelerate, knowing that they're going to be solid? And then do you do that with ads? Do you do it without ads? And how do you advise people on that?
Yeah. Great question because yeah, we want to not just not waste our money. We don't want to waste our money, but we also don't want to waste our time. Um, and a lot of businesses when they're first starting out, especially if they're run by, let's say, a solopreneur type person, they don't have a lot of money to put into the business. But what they do have is time. You've got money and time, and you kind of balance both of those, right? So in the beginning, and I think one of the most powerful ways of growing a business that gets overlooked now with pay per click. Everybody's talking about pay per click and an SEO, but there's so much on. You'll run this ad, you'll spend $1 and you'll make two. I'll do that all day long. I'll run that until it's broken, and that's cool, and that can accelerate your business growth. But something that a lot of people aren't talking about is outreach, is just manual grinding, outreach. And my advice is to create a list of people who you think can help, um, who can help get your message out there, who can help maybe refer. The ultimate is, right, is finding basically an affiliate, is finding somebody who will refer business to you, and they'll do it. If you've got, let's say, 10 people all referring business to you, then you're not having to work finding that business. And not only that, but they probably have some a level of trust built up with the customer already. So the customer trusts them by association. If they're referring to you, there's already trust there, which is so powerful. So you don't have to work as hard on an ongoing basis to build that trust. And I think that's a way, like that sort of growth hack that I was just talking about with grass racks for a product company. That is kind of the outreach that I would do with a product company, is find the other businesses who can help refer business to you, give them a cut. Don't be greedy, but if you're only paying a percentage of the sales that when you're making them, I'll take that deal all day long. So yeah, I think outreach is something that is something that anybody can do. You can put a list together of people who can help you out and just go through the list and just be persistent.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget, to your point, when you pay for advertising, it's like taking a loan from the bank. You might not get it back, but you paid it. So it's
Yeah.
gone.
Oh yeah.
And in case, for those of y'all who are thinking startup, I'm going to give you a real quick, definite myth. And I've succumbed to this many times, is well, you know what? If I, you got to spend money to make money. Therefore, if I spend money, I'm going to make money. Nope. You can,
Right.
entrepreneurial gods, I just threw out 10,000 bucks in PPC ads or whatever it is. Does it come in back? Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not.
Yep.
And when you have an affiliate type relationship, to your point, for those who are not familiar with that, it's where you have somebody, an affiliate is somebody that represents you, or just, for a small time, they just sort of refer somebody else and say, hey,
Hmm.
Andrew has this, or as he mentioned, the knives, then referred the food service. Well, you're only paying that sales commission or that affiliate commission if a
Yep.
sale's made. And the simplest math is, well, if you were to hire a salesperson, what would you pay that person? Well, wait, I'd pay him a salary and this. I said, no, you didn't have to pay him a salary. What if it was just a commission only salesperson? Well, wait, I'd
Hmm.
pay that 30%, 40%, 50%. Sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it depends. With physical products, it might be harder. Now, if you
Sure.
have digital products, you can afford 50% because it's
Yeah.
50% of what you weren't going to get anyway. And again, it
Exactly.
doesn't have to be that number, and it can be based on the lifetime value of, but like anything else, the better you treat your affiliates, the more abundant you are with them, the more they're going to want to send business your way. They're probably in it to make a good buck too.
Yep.
But there's so many ways you can do that, that at the very least you're leveraging, like you said, it truly is win-win, because that person's saying, well, I'm doing this one transaction of sharpening these knives, and that's all I can make off this. And the person saying, I'm selling this food service, that's all I got. And just with a back and forth, literally it becomes, 1 + 1 can equal 3 in that
Hmm.
sort of situation where you can have more come from that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's an ongoing, that business will keep coming in as long as they're incentivized enough, to continue to refer people, and maybe they write a blog article, maybe they do a review or a video or something, which helps your SEO, which is kind of the next thing that I would dig into before PPC if you don't have, a lot of money to play with. And yeah, it's gonna keep coming in. And kind of going back to Instagram, not to completely, bash keep bashing them, because I actually really do like Instagram. But we've reached out to influencers. An influencer is an affiliate marketer. It's the same thing. They're just on a social platform, and that's kind of just the social buzzword. And also, I think probably the career choice of a lot of kids these days, if they had to, I want to be an influencer. Um, we've reached out to a bunch of influencers, and some of them, they want the way that their model works is it's pay per post. And so you pay every time they post something. um, and for me, that just doesn't work, especially now, because they're taking advantage of the fact that it's social media, or influencer marketing is like the wild west. Nobody knows exactly how to value it yet. Companies are starting to get better. What happens is big companies come in that aren't as tight on the purse strings, and they're like, well, we're going to spend $100,000 over here. We'll give this influencer 20,000, this influencer 30. We'll get some more exposure. Our return might not be for 5 years, and they don't care. $100,000, if the company's making enough, doesn't matter. But when you need a return and you need it quickly, that just doesn't work. And then what they'll do is, sometimes, they'll come back and they'll say, well, it's $500 a post. So I'm like, well, what if I give you whatever it is, 10, 20%, for every single sale you refer? So for forever, like, instead of making that $500 for this one post, what if you just, make it this percentage? And then sometimes, some people will go for that, and those are the ones that I want to work with. But the ones who don't, it's like, they're talking about how valuable their audience is to you when you're going to pay them $500. As soon as you start talking about a commission, they're like, you're like, oh, that doesn't work for me. And it's like, hey, wait, I thought you said your audience was super valuable. So if it is, put your money where your mouth is. If it's really valuable to me, then it's really valuable to you, because you'll get all this commission. So yeah, you definitely have to be careful there. And I think we're starting to kind of dial the value in, and the playing field is getting leveled a little bit, but it's going to take a lot of time for that to happen.
Yeah, there's still always the glamour effect of so and so is endorsing my product,
Yep.
and that sounds great, but it doesn't necessarily convert.
Yep.
Question for you. Final, your thoughts on somebody that's about to consider creating their launch plan. Where should they start first? What should they first be doing? You hear a lot of these stories about the paper napkin entrepreneur, and they just wrote it on a piece of
Hmm.
paper. And again, a lot of this sounds great, and it sounds, and that's part of it. To be really clear, it is you get an idea in the middle of the night, whatever it is. Where should a person start? What's their first step if they're making a launch plan or just a product plan?
Yeah. Market research, figure out who your competition is, um, and figure out who your ideal customer is, and whatever, make sure that the problems that they have are problems that you're solving. And really, that's the most important thing. If you can nail those two things, then everything else is, I was going to say gravy. It's not. It's a lot of hard work, but everything else is totally doable. But if you can't figure out, how you're going to compete in the market and who your ideal customer is, then if you don't know those things really, really well, then you're going to have a hard time launching any product or service.
Yeah, and that's for those of y'all, if you're going to re-listen to this any part, that's the one page that you want to listen to a bunch or read a bunch of times, because if
Hmm.
if you're not doing those three things at least, and those are not the only three things by any stretch, but those
Hmm.
three things, any one of those, if you get them wrong, will significantly hurt your chances, or at least make
Yep.
it way more painful than it needs to be. Thank
Exactly.
you
Yep.
so much, Andrew. Where can
Oh, no
people
problem.
find out about you, about your podcast, your consulting? Where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the consulting launch strategy service is stokestrategies.com, STOKE strategies. And also stokeventures.com is a product development. And then for my podcast is the one that I co-host, that is thatentrepreneurlife.com. Yeah. And Wade, I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. And for those of you all, again, check out what he's up to, check out the podcast. And as always, look forward to helping you help more people, make more money in less time, do what you do best so you can better enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks for listening.